Mr. Mercer, why are you asking us for $6,000? Helen Brooks kept her voice low, but the question still seemed to strike the walls of her office. Outside the glass, people stood in line with deposit slips and winter coats. A little boy spun in circles beside the Christmas tree in the lobby. Everything looked ordinary. The only thing that had changed was the woman across from me. 10 minutes earlier, she had been a courteous bank manager reviewing a small home repair loan. Now she had locked her office door and pulled the shade halfway down. I placed both hands on the manila folder in my lap. Inside were 3 estimates for a replacement furnace, the cheapest one just under $6,000. Because mine died Tuesday night, I said. The house was 46 degrees when I woke up. I can manage with space heaters for a few days, but January is coming. Helen turned her monitor slightly away from the lobby. Her face had gone pale. That isn't what I mean. She tapped one line on the screen. I saw my full name. I saw the last 4 digits of my social security number. Then I saw a number with more commas than anything that had ever belonged to me. $28,412,619. For a few seconds, I thought it had to be someone else's account. I was 72 years old. I had spent 38 years maintaining electrical systems for the railroad. My pension and Social Security came to a little over $5,100 a month. According to my son, nearly all of my savings had disappeared into my late wife's medical bills and my own heart surgery. I clipped coupons. I drove a 14-year-old Buick. I had postponed fixing the back porch because Daniel said there was no money for it. That can't be mine, I said. Helen's eyes moved to the office door. The account is a family trust. You are listed as the primary lifetime beneficiary. Our bank acquired the fiduciary company that administers it 8 months ago. The records were consolidated last week. Your Social Security number triggered the match when I ran your loan application. Who controls it? She hesitated. That hesitation told me more than the balance. My son? I asked. Helen nodded once. Daniel Mercer is listed as acting distribution advisor under an incapacity provision. The correspondence address is his home in Westbridge. There is also a corporate co-trustee. I did not shout. I did not ask Helen to repeat the number. I did not imagine yachts, new cars, or a house in Florida. I thought of my wife, Margaret, whispering to me from a hospital bed 9 years earlier, "Make sure the children don't let money turn them into strangers." I had believed the danger died with the modest portfolio she left behind. I slid the loan estimates onto Helen's desk. Print everything you are legally allowed to give me. Mr. Mercer, there are restrictions, but as beneficiary, you have a right to an accounting. Then start with that. Helen studied me for a moment. Do you have an attorney? Not anymore. Do you have somewhere safe to stay tonight? That question tightened something behind my ribs. Why would I need somewhere safe? She turned the screen farther toward me and pointed to a recent entry. It was not a withdrawal. It was a notation from the trust department. Petition for permanent guardianship pending, supporting documents received from Daniel Mercer. The date was that morning. My son had filed papers asking a court to declare me mentally incompetent on the same day I walked into a bank and found the fortune he had hidden from me for 9 years. I closed the folder and stood. My knees felt steady, though I could hear blood beating in my ears. Mrs. Brooks, please don't call my son. Bank policy may require our trust department to notify the acting advisor that you requested. I'm not asking you to break the law. I buttoned my old coat. I'm asking you to follow it very carefully. For the first time, a little warmth returned to her expression. I can do that. I reached the door, then looked back at the impossible balance on her screen. And please cancel the loan application. Helen almost smiled, but neither of us found it funny. Mr. Mercer, she said, this account may be yours, but that does not mean the money is safe. I understand. I did not yet. But by sunset, I would understand that Daniel had not merely stolen money. He had stolen my name, my choices, and 8 years with my daughter. The $28 million was only the trail he had failed to erase. The temperature outside was 21 degrees. I sat in the Buick with the engine running and watched people come and go through the bank's revolving door. My first instinct was to call Daniel. That instinct embarrassed me now, but it had been trained into me over years. When the insurance company confused a claim, I called Daniel. When a property tax notice looked wrong, I called Daniel. When my debit card stopped working at the grocery store, I called Daniel. and he explained that he had moved money between accounts for my protection. He was 45, well-dressed, patient when he wanted to be, and very good at making assistance feel like love. 9 years earlier, after my bypass surgery, I had awakened to find him beside my hospital bed holding a legal pad. "Don't worry about bills, Dad," he said. "He'll handle everything until you're back on your feet." I had been grateful. Margaret had died only 6 months before. Grief had turned ordinary tasks into walls. I could repair a signal cabinet in a snowstorm, but I could not open an envelope addressed to both of us without losing the rest of the afternoon. Daniel offered to manage the paperwork. I signed a temporary financial power of attorney while a nurse watched. The document was supposed to expire after 90 days. After I recovered, Daniel continued helping. At first, he showed me every statement. Then the paper statements stopped arriving. He said everything had moved online. When I asked for passwords, he told me the sites were confusing and full of scams. That should have insulted me. Instead, I heard concern in his voice because I wanted to hear it. He began transferring my pension into a household account and sending me a monthly amount for groceries and utilities. If I needed extra, I asked. He never called it an allowance, but that was what it became. "There isn't much left after Mom's care," he reminded me whenever I mentioned repairs. "We have to make it last." Margaret's final year had been expensive. Insurance paid most of it, but not all. Daniel showed me spreadsheets with pharmacy costs, private nursing, physical therapy, and legal fees. I never added the columns myself. A man can spend his life teaching his children honesty and still fail to check whether they learned it. My phone rang on the passenger seat. Daniel. For one foolish second, I wondered whether he somehow knew. I let it ring 4 times before answering. "Hello? Dad, where are you?" His voice was bright and casual. "I stopped by with Vanessa. Your car's gone. I had errands." "In this weather?" "The roads are clear." There was a pause. Daniel did not like answers he had not approved in advance. "Did you go to the pharmacy?" "Among other places." "What other places?" I looked across the parking lot at Helen's shaded office. "Why do you ask?" He laughed, but it came a fraction late. "Because your furnace is out and you're supposed to be taking it easy. Vanessa found a retirement community with immediate availability, just until we get things sorted. I'm not moving into a retirement community. Nobody said moving permanently. It's respite care. I can sleep in my own house." "Dad, this stubbornness is exactly what worries me." His voice softened in the practiced way he used when other people were listening. "You left the stove on last month. I left a kettle on for 6 minutes. You forgot it. I was in the basement resetting a breaker. This is what I mean. You always have an explanation." In the background, I heard Vanessa murmur something. Then Daniel covered the phone. The sound became muffled, but I caught 2 words: bank and today. When he returned, the brightness was gone. "Did you try to take out a loan?" There it was. "Who told you that?" "I get credit alerts. We agreed I would monitor them." We had never agreed. He had simply done it. "The furnace needs replacing," I said. "I told you I'd handle it. You told me there wasn't enough money." "There isn't enough money to throw $6,000 at the first contractor who frightens you." I had 3 estimates. Silence. For years, I had mistaken silence for patience. Sitting in that cold parking lot, I finally heard what it really was. Calculation. "Which bank?" he asked. "Why does that matter?" "Dad," his tone sharpened. "Which bank?" I watched my own breath fog the windshield. "I'll see you Sunday." "We're coming back tonight." "No. The house is cold." "Then tell me where you are." "I'm 72 years old, Daniel. I don't need permission to run errands." "This isn't about permission. It's about safety." "Goodbye." I ended the call. My hand trembled. I hated that. I held it against the steering wheel until it stopped. There was only one lawyer I could think of, and I had not spoken to him since Margaret's funeral. Arthur Bell had handled her father's estate and drafted our wills. He was a soft-spoken man with steel-gray hair and an old office above a pharmacy in downtown Mason Creek. I found his number in my contacts and expected a receptionist. Arthur answered himself. "Bell and Pierce." "Arthur, this is Raymond Mercer." He was quiet for so long that I checked whether the call had dropped. "Raymond," he said finally. "Where are you?" "In my car outside Lake County Mutual." "Are you alone?" It was the second time in 20 minutes someone had asked me that. "Yes." Tell me exactly what happened. I did. I gave him the balance, Helen's name, the guardianship notation, and Daniel's phone call. Arthur did not interrupt until I mentioned Margaret's trust. Do not go home, he said. Everyone keeps saying that. Because Daniel has been trying to prove you cannot care for yourself. A house with no heat may be presented as evidence, whether the furnace failed naturally or not. You think he broke my furnace? I think we should assume nothing and document everything. Arthur, did you know about this trust? Another silence. Yes, he said. The word hurt more than it should have. For 9 years? I knew Margaret created it. I did not know the company had been sold or that the shares had become so valuable. After your surgery, Daniel sent me a letter terminating my services on your behalf. I tried to speak to you. He said you wanted no further contact. I never said that. I know that now. Why didn't you come to my house? I did, twice. The first time, Daniel said you were sleeping. The second time, you were staying with him after cardiac rehabilitation. I wrote 3 letters. All were returned. I leaned my forehead against the steering wheel. Another person I had blamed for disappearing had been pushed away in my name. Arthur spoke gently. Come to my office. Park behind the building. I'll have a locksmith meet us at your house later, along with a licensed heating inspector. We need facts before Daniel creates more of them. I'm not running from my son. No, Arthur said. You're stepping out of the room while he sets the stage. Arthur's office had not changed. The same brass lamp stood on his desk. The same framed photograph showed him and Margaret's father holding Wallies beside a lake. Only Arthur looked older. Then again, so did I. He locked the door after I entered and took my coat. Coffee? Black. He poured from a machine in the corner. I noticed his hand shook slightly when he set down the cup. You're frightened, I said. I'm angry. At Daniel? At myself. Margaret asked me to serve as trust protector. I declined because I was preparing to retire. I recommended a corporate fiduciary and kept copies of the original instruments. When Daniel cut off contact, I accepted your supposed decision too easily. He opened a fireproof cabinet and removed a thick blue binder. Margaret Ann Mercer Irrevocable Family Trust was stamped across the front. Seeing her full name made my throat close. Arthur rested one palm on the binder. Before we open this, I need to ask questions Daniel's attorney will ask. What day is it? Friday, December 12th. Who is president? I answered. What did you eat for breakfast? Oatmeal with raisins and half a grapefruit. How did you get here? I drove east on County Road 6, took Maple to 3rd, and parked behind your building beside a delivery van that needs a new left taillight. Arthur's mouth twitched. Any falls in the last year? No. Missed medications? No. Memory diagnosis? No. Then we arrange an independent medical evaluation immediately, not your current doctor. Dr. Patel has treated me for 20 years. And who schedules your appointments with him? I knew the answer. Daniel. Arthur opened the binder. Margaret had come from money, though no one meeting us would have guessed. Her father, Samuel Hale, started with a machine shop that made precision valves. By the time we married, the shop had become Hale Surgical Systems, a respected regional manufacturer. Margaret owned a minority block of non-voting shares. We lived on my railroad salary and reinvested every dividend. She said the shares were for old age, emergencies, and the children after we were both gone. The trust held those shares. During Margaret's lifetime, she controlled them. After her death, I became the sole lifetime beneficiary. The trust could pay for my housing, health, education, maintenance, and general welfare. Whatever remained after my death would be divided equally between Daniel and Rebecca. Equal, I said. Daniel told me Margaret left Rebecca almost nothing because of what she did. Arthur looked up. What do you believe Rebecca did? She tried to make Margaret change the will when she was sick. Daniel showed me emails. Rebecca called him a thief and said the company's shares should go to her. Did you ever ask Rebecca? She refused to explain, or someone prevented her from explaining. The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. Arthur flipped to the incapacity section. The corporate trustee could appoint a distribution advisor if 2 independent physicians certified that I lacked capacity. Daniel was the first nominee. Rebecca was the second. Any advisor who concealed material information, self-dealt, or acted in bad faith would be removed and treated as having predeceased me for inheritance purposes. Margaret insisted on that clause, Arthur said. She had seen relatives fight over her father's estate. How did Daniel get appointed? I had heart surgery. I wasn't incompetent. That is one of several questions. Arthur removed his glasses. The original corporate trustee was Heritage Fiduciary Services. It was small and conservative. 4 years ago, it changed ownership twice. Lake County Mutual acquired what remained. Records may be scattered. Can Daniel spend the principal? Not freely. But he can recommend distributions for your benefit. If a corporate officer approves them without sufficient scrutiny, money can leave. How much? We need the accounting. A hard knock sounded at the office door. Arthur and I looked at each other. The knock came again. Raymond Mercer? A man called from the hall. Arthur walked to the window facing the street, looked down, then returned. Process server. That was fast. Daniel planned this before today. Arthur opened the door. A young man in a navy parka asked my name, handed me an envelope, and recited that I had been served. He seemed embarrassed, as if he knew the accusation inside. The petition was 32 pages long. Daniel alleged that I suffered progressive cognitive impairment, financial confusion, paranoia, unsafe driving, medication errors, and inability to maintain my residence. He requested emergency temporary guardianship, authority over my medical care, and power to move me into supervised housing. Attached were photographs of peeling paint on my back porch, a scorched kettle, unopened mail in a box, and the thermostat reading 46 degrees. The thermostat photograph had been taken that morning. He was in my house while I was at the bank, I said. Arthur took the page. You said Vanessa was with him. That's what he claimed. Another attachment showed me in a hospital bed, disoriented after bypass surgery 9 years earlier. In the video transcript, I called Daniel by my brother's name and asked for Margaret, forgetting for a few seconds that she was dead. I remembered that morning. I had tubes in my chest and morphine in my veins. Daniel had stood beside the bed with his phone held low. I thought he was sending Rebecca an update. He saved it for 9 years, I whispered. Arthur's jaw tightened. The hearing is Monday morning. He's asking for an emergency order this afternoon without notice, but service gives us a chance to respond. 3 days before they can take me out of my house. They cannot simply take you. The petition says they can, if a judge grants it. Will a judge? Arthur did not comfort me with a lie. A 72-year-old widower living alone in a freezing house, with a video of post-operative confusion and a son swearing he is in danger? A judge may grant limited temporary authority until Monday. I looked again at the picture of my thermostat. Daniel had built his case around my life while I thanked him for paying the bills. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. We love you, Dad. Please don't make this harder than it has to be. Arthur read it over my shoulder. Do not respond. I want them to know I'm not afraid. They already know. That's why they rushed to court. He called the courthouse, then a physician he trusted. While he spoke, I turned pages. The petition listed Rebecca's whereabouts as unknown. Daniel claimed she had been estranged due to a history of financial exploitation. At the bottom, under interested parties, was an address in Cedar Falls. For 8 years, I had believed Rebecca lived somewhere in Arizona. She was 43 miles away. The heating inspector met us at my house at 4:30. His name was Luis, a broad-shouldered man with oil on his cuffs and no patience for mysteries that could be solved with a screwdriver. Arthur filmed from the doorway while Luis opened the furnace panel. Within 5 minutes, he held up a small copper safety switch. This was disconnected, he said. Could it come loose by itself? Arthur asked. Not like this. The retaining clip was removed and placed inside the cabinet. He pointed to it. Someone knew enough to stop the unit without damaging it. My son sold commercial real estate. He knew nothing about furnaces. Vanessa's younger brother owned a property maintenance company. I did not say that aloud. Facts first, Arthur had told me. Luis reconnected the switch. Warm air began moving through the vents within minutes. There was nothing wrong with the furnace. How much do I owe you? I asked. $85 for the service call. It was the first honest bill I had received that day. Arthur had a locksmith change the locks. We photographed every room, the full refrigerator, my labeled medication organizer, the clean stove, and the folder where I kept paid utility bills. The unopened mail in Daniel's photograph had been pulled from a recycling box. Most of it was advertisements. On the kitchen table sat a cream envelope I had not placed there. Brookstone Senior Living was embossed on the front. Inside was an admission contract with a room reserved for Monday afternoon. The monthly fee was $9,200. The payment authorization named the Margaret Mercer Trust. They were planning to use my own money to confine me. Arthur read the contract. There's a non-refundable community fee of $25,000, already marked paid. Can the trust pay that without telling me? Apparently it did. I lowered myself into Margaret's chair. She had chosen the oak kitchen table when Daniel was 9 and Rebecca was 6. The children did homework there. Margaret rolled pie crust there. After she became sick, we sat there at night and pretended not to be frightened. The house was not grand. It was a 2-story craftsman with green shutters and a porch I rebuilt myself. Margaret used her first large dividend check to pay off the mortgage. She called it the safest investment we would ever make. Now Daniel's petition described it as a deteriorating property I irrationally refused to leave. Why would he do this now? I asked. He has controlled the trust for years. Why the sudden rush? Arthur laid the admission papers beside the petition. Because something changed. My phone rang again. This time it was Helen. Mr. Mercer, I'm sorry to call after business hours, she said. Our trust compliance officer located an instruction submitted yesterday. It requests a distribution of $4.7 million to acquire a commercial property. The request says the property will provide housing and long-term income for you. What property? A former hotel outside Westbridge. The purchasing entity is VDM Living Holdings. VDM. Vanessa and Daniel Mercer. Can you stop it? Arthur asked, leaning close enough to hear. The transaction was scheduled for Monday, Helen said. Because Mr. Mercer appeared in person today and disputed incapacity, I filed an internal elder exploitation alert. Compliance has placed a temporary hold pending verification. Will Daniel be notified? He may already have received an automated delay notice. That explained the speed. Daniel needed a guardianship order before the bank completed its review. With an emergency order, he could claim my objection was meaningless. Helen continued. There is more. The trust has paid a consulting company called Vale Management Group approximately $31,000 a month for the last 7 years. The memo descriptions say property oversight, beneficiary support, and care coordination. Who owns it? Public records list Vanessa Mercer as managing member. $31,000 a month. More than $2.5 million over 7 years. Vanessa had visited me perhaps twice a month, usually for less than an hour. She ordered my prescriptions online, argued with cable companies, and reminded me I should be grateful. Can you send the records to Arthur? Once I receive signed authorization from you, I can have the forms ready tomorrow morning. I'll be there when you open. After the call, Arthur sat across from me. Raymond, this may become a criminal matter. He is my son. I know. I taught him to ride a bicycle in that driveway. I sat beside him for 2 nights when he had pneumonia. When he wrecked his first car, I worked overtime for 6 months to help replace it. Arthur waited. And he disconnected my furnace, I said. We do not know that yet. No. We only know he photographed the result. The furnace hummed beneath us. Warm air filled the kitchen, but I could not stop shivering. Arthur pointed to Rebecca's address in the petition. Do you want me to contact her? I imagined my daughter at 28, standing on our porch after Margaret's funeral. Her face was swollen from crying. Daniel stood behind me, one hand on my shoulder, while I told her I had seen the emails. I told her I could not bear any more lies. She kept saying, Dad, please let me show you. I closed the door. That was the last time I saw her. No, I said. Then I corrected myself. I need to do it. Tonight? If she will see me. Arthur looked at the dark windows. He'll drive. Rebecca lived in a small brick duplex near Cedar Falls Community College. A paper snowflake hung in the front window. There was a blue hatchback in the drive and a child's bicycle leaning against the garage. I didn't know she had children, I said. Arthur turned off the engine. One son. His name is Noah. He's 7. I stared at him. You knew? Rebecca called me after he was born. She asked whether I thought you would return a photograph. Did she send one? Yes. I never received it. Arthur looked toward the house. I believe you. The porch light came on before we reached the door. A boy appeared behind the glass, saw 2 old men, and ran away. Then Rebecca opened the door. She was 48, though in my mind she had remained 40. Her dark hair was shorter and threaded with silver near the temples. She had Margaret's eyes. For a moment, no one moved. "Dad?" I had rehearsed explanations during the drive. None survived the sound of that word. "I was wrong," I said. Her hand tightened on the doorframe. "I was wrong about you," I continued. "I don't know how much yet, but enough that I should have come years ago." She looked past me at Arthur. "What happened?" "Daniel filed for guardianship," he said. "Raymond discovered a trust." All color left her face. She pulled us inside and locked the door. The boy watched from the hallway. Rebecca bent toward him. "Noah, this is my father. Your grandfather." Noah studied me with open curiosity. "The train, Grandpa?" My heart seemed to stop and start again. "You told him about me?" Rebecca's eyes filled. "I told him the good parts." Noah came closer. He wore dinosaur pajamas and held a model locomotive with one wheel missing. "Mom said you can fix anything on a train." "Most things," I said. My voice broke on the second word. He handed me the locomotive as if we had met for exactly that purpose. Rebecca sent him upstairs to read, promising she would check on him soon. Then she led us to a small dining room. Papers covered one end of the table. Bank statements, printed emails, certified mail receipts, and photographs were arranged in labeled folders. "You kept all of it," Arthur said. I knew someday he would go too far. Rebecca did not look at me. "I just didn't know whether Dad would still be alive when it happened." I deserved the sentence. I let it land. She opened a red folder and pushed several emails toward me. The first appeared to be from her to Daniel, dated 2 weeks before Margaret died. "Mom isn't thinking clearly. Get Dad out of the room and make her sign the shares to me. He'll waste everything if we let him." It was the email Daniel showed me after the funeral. Rebecca placed another page beside it. "This is the message from my sent folder, verified by the email provider during the first investigation. Daniel, Mom is frightened and medicated. Stop asking her to sign anything. Dad needs to be present, and Arthur should review every document. I don't care what happens to the shares. I care that nobody pressures her." The timestamp was the same. The message was nearly the same, except 2 characters differed. "He changed it," I said. "He created an address that looked like mine and forwarded the altered messages to himself. He did it with 3 emails. Why didn't you show me?" Rebecca's control cracked. "I tried." She pulled out a certified mail envelope, stamped, "Refused." My address was on the front. Daniel's handwriting marked it "Returned to sender. Recipient declines." Another envelope had been mailed to the rehabilitation center after my surgery. It was returned with patient discharged, though I remained there for 12 more days. She showed me call logs. 47 calls over 6 months, most lasting fewer than 5 seconds. Daniel had placed her number on the blocked list of the phone plan he managed for me. "I came to the house 4 times, she said. "Once Vanessa said you were asleep. Twice, no one answered. The last time Daniel met me in the driveway and said you would call the police if I came back." "Why did you stop?" The anger in her eyes gave way to exhaustion. "Because I was pregnant, Dad. My husband had just left. I was working 2 jobs, and every time I tried to reach you, Daniel found a way to punish me. He called my employer and accused me of stealing from a vulnerable adult. He contacted my landlord. He told Mom's relatives I was addicted to pills. I never believed that part. You believed enough." I looked down at my hands. Yes, the house was quiet except for the furnace and the faint scrape of Noah moving upstairs. "I need to know what happened with the trust," I said. Rebecca sat across from me. "About 3 months after your surgery, I received a notice naming Daniel as temporary distribution advisor. I objected because the trust required 2 independent doctors to certify incapacity. One letter was from your cardiologist. The other was supposedly from a neurologist. I called the neurologist's office. They had never treated you." "Did you tell the trustee?" Arthur asked. "I sent everything to Heritage. Their compliance officer opened a review. 2 weeks later, she was fired during a merger. Daniel told the new officer I was a disgruntled remainder beneficiary trying to seize control. Then he produced the altered emails." "Why didn't you sue?" I asked. "With what money?" "Daniel had Mom's estate attorneys, the trust company, and a signed statement that you wanted no contact with me. I never signed that." Rebecca opened another folder. Inside was a 1-page letter bearing my name. "I request that Rebecca Mercer receive no information about my finances or medical condition. Her continued interference causes me distress. The signature looked like mine, but the R leaned too far right. Arthur held it to the lamp. This may be traced from another document. I reported suspected forgery to County Adult Protective Services, Rebecca said. A caseworker visited Dad. Daniel was present. The case was closed after Dad said he trusted him. I remembered the visit. A woman asked whether anyone controlled my money against my wishes. Daniel had made coffee and sat at the kitchen table. I laughed and said my son was the only reason the bills were paid on time. My own voice had closed the door Rebecca fought to open. "I'm sorry," I said. She crossed her arms. "That doesn't restore 8 years. No. It doesn't give Noah a grandfather at his kindergarten play. No. It doesn't give me Mom's last Christmas back. You made me leave before dessert because Daniel said I upset her." I closed my eyes. Margaret had asked where Rebecca went. I told her Rebecca had chosen work over family. Margaret turned her face toward the window and said nothing for the rest of the evening. "No," I whispered. "It doesn't restore any of it." Rebecca's voice softened, but only slightly. "Then why are you here?" "Because Daniel is trying to have me declared incompetent. Because he hid your mother's trust. Because I need the truth." I looked at the folders, then at my daughter. "But even if none of that were happening, I should have come. I should have listened to you before I listened to papers that told me what I already feared." "What did you fear?" "That after your mother died, there would be no family left unless I held on to the child who stayed closest." Rebecca looked away. "I chose the one who made me dependent," I said, "and I punished the one who asked me to stand on my own feet." A long silence passed. Then Noah appeared at the doorway with the locomotive. "Can you fix the wheel now?" Rebecca wiped her cheek. "Not now, honey." I held out my hand. "May I see it?" Noah brought it to me. The plastic axle had slipped from a shallow groove. I used the tip of Arthur's pocket knife to guide it back into place. Noah rolled the locomotive across the table. It moved perfectly. He grinned. Mom was right. Rebecca looked at me, her expression caught between grief and something more cautious. "You can stay for coffee," she said. "Then we work." We worked until almost midnight. Rebecca had spent years assembling fragments, but she had never seen a complete trust accounting. Helen's records began filling the gaps the next morning. Arthur, Rebecca, and I met her at the bank before the lobby opened. A security guard escorted us through a side entrance to a conference room on the second floor. Helen had invited the bank's trust compliance officer, a careful man who introduced himself, apologized for what he could not yet discuss, and then said something I respected. "Our acquisition does not erase our responsibility," he said. "If predecessor institutions failed, we inherited the duty to correct those failures." He placed 3 binders on the table. The first showed the trust's growth. When Margaret died, the Hale Surgical shares were valued at roughly $3.2 million. 2 years later, a global medical manufacturer acquired the company. Cash and stock from the sale went into the trust. Good investments and a rising market did the rest. At its highest point, the account held more than $31 million. The second binder showed distributions. The trust had legitimately paid my medical insurance premiums, property taxes, and several household bills. But those ordinary expenses were buried beneath payments I had never seen. Vale Management Group received $2,604,000 in monthly fees. VDM Living Holdings received $900,000 as a housing development advance. A Westbridge dealership received $138,000 for 2 vehicles described as beneficiary transportation. I drove neither of them. A private club received $84,000 in membership dues under social wellness. There were luxury travel charges for family-supported respite. While I stayed home and reheated soup, Daniel and Vanessa traveled to Italy, Costa Rica, and a resort in the Bahamas on money justified as my care. The third binder contained advisor certifications. Every quarter, Daniel signed a statement confirming that each distribution served my welfare and that no conflict of interest existed. My son's signature appeared 87 times. I turned every page. Anger urged me to look away, but anger had already cost me enough. I wanted the full measure of what he had chosen. "How much did they take?" I asked. The compliance officer folded his hands. "Direct payments to entities tied to Daniel or Vanessa total at least $3.7 million. That excludes payments requiring further investigation." The proposed $4.7 million transaction did not settle. Why did the corporate trustee approve any of it? Rebecca asked. Documentation stated Mr. Mercer was incapacitated and living under his son's full-time supervision. Vale submitted monthly care reports. Helen slid one toward me. The report described meal preparation, bathing assistance, transportation to medical appointments, home safety monitoring, and daily cognitive exercises. According to Vanessa, I required help dressing and could not be left alone for more than 2 hours. On many of the dates listed, she had not come to my house at all. Who verified these? Arthur asked. A trust officer named Colin Reese approved most distributions. He left the predecessor company 18 months ago. Any relationship to the Mercers? We are examining that. Rebecca pointed to a line in one report. It says Dad moved into Daniel's home in March 8 years ago. I stayed there 17 days after rehabilitation, I said. The compliance officer nodded. Our file lists that as your permanent address. My driver's license, tax records, and voter registration show otherwise. Yes. He looked uncomfortable. They do. Helen opened a smaller folder. This is the original incapacity certification. The first letter came from my cardiologist 6 days after surgery. It said I was temporarily unable to manage complex decisions while hospitalized and using narcotic pain medication. Temporary was underlined. The second letter came from a neurologist named Dr. Leon Vargas. It stated that I suffered probable vascular dementia and would not regain independent capacity. I have never met Dr. Vargas, I said. Rebecca tapped the letterhead. The phone number belongs to an answering service. I called it years ago. Arthur examined the notary block. The signature needs forensic review, Helen said. There is no annual recertification, although the trust required one. Mr. Reese entered a permanent status code after the merger. So one false letter and one temporary letter erased me for 9 years, I said. No one answered. The proposed hotel purchase appeared in a separate file. VDM Living planned to convert a failing roadside hotel into an assisted living facility. An appraisal valued the property at $2.1 million. The trust was being asked to buy it for $4.7 million from a seller connected to Vanessa's brother. Daniel's plan would have paid his family more than twice the property's value, then charged my trust to house me there. This is why he needs the guardianship now, Arthur said. The closing deadline is Monday. If he cannot produce proof of authority, the seller may walk away or expose the arrangement. The compliance officer pushed a form toward me. Mr. Mercer, this is a request to suspend all distributions except essential direct expenses while the bank investigates. You have the right to sign it if you understand what it does. I read every word. Then I explained it back to him before signing. Helen watched closely. She was already thinking like a witness. One more thing, she said. At 11:43 last night, someone attempted to access your online profile from an address associated with Vale Management. The password was changed, but multi-factor verification went to a phone ending in Daniel's number. Was he successful? No. We disabled electronic access after your fraud report. My own phone vibrated. Daniel had sent 6 messages. Dad, I know you're confused. Arthur is manipulating you. Rebecca has always wanted Mom's money. Please come home so we can talk privately. You are putting the whole family at risk. If you love us, don't do anything until Sunday dinner. The last message stayed on my screen. If you love us. Daniel had learned to turn love into a debt only he could calculate. There is no Sunday dinner, Rebecca said after reading it. I put the phone away. There will be. Arthur frowned. Raymond. He wants me at his table because he thinks tables make him look like a son instead of an advisor who stole from a beneficiary. Let him believe it works. That is dangerous. Then we make it useful. Rebecca studied me. You want him to talk? For 9 years, everyone else has been speaking for me. I looked at the binders. I want to hear what he says when he thinks he still can. Arthur found the sealed letter in the back of the trust binder. It was not legally operative. Margaret had labeled it guidance for my family and instructed the trustee to provide copies after her death. Heritage's file showed it had been mailed to Daniel's address while I was in rehabilitation. No copy ever reached Rebecca or me. Arthur asked whether I wanted him to read it aloud. He'll read it, I said. Margaret's handwriting had always leaned slightly to the left, as if each word resisted being hurried. My dear Ray, if you are reading this, then I have left you with the one task I most wanted to share. growing old. I am sorry. I know you will be tempted to give the children whatever they ask because generosity feels easier than loneliness. Please remember that our love was never measured by what we surrendered. It was measured by what we built together. The shares in this trust came from my father, but their purpose belongs to us. Use them to live freely. Repair the house. Travel if you wish. Buy the ridiculous fishing boat you always pretended not to want. Help the children when help makes them stronger, not when it teaches them to use you. Daniel has ambition and charm. Rebecca has courage and a tongue that runs ahead of her patience. Neither is better loved. Neither should control the other. If one tries to turn you against the other, stop and demand proof in the same room. Secrets grow where families refuse to sit together. I have included strict provisions because grief makes good people vulnerable and frightened people easy to direct. If anyone claims you cannot speak for yourself, I want your voice sought first, loudly and in person. Most of all, Ray, do not confuse peace with silence. We had a good marriage because you finally learned to argue with me. Keep arguing for your own life. Always yours, Margaret. I finished, folded the letter along its old creases, and sat very still. Rebecca had turned toward the window. Arthur removed his glasses and polished them, though they were clean. She knew us, Rebecca said, better than we knew ourselves. On the second page, Margaret addressed the trustee. She requested annual in-person contact with me, separate from any family member, whenever an incapacity advisor was active. That request was not binding, but Heritage had followed it once. A trust officer visited me during rehabilitation. Daniel remained in the room and answered most questions. The officer marked me cooperative and well-supported. After the merger, no one visited again. At noon, Arthur drove me to an independent geriatric specialist at the university hospital. The examination lasted nearly 3 hours. I completed memory tests, reasoning exercises, medication reviews, and a driving safety interview. The doctor asked me to recall 5 words: draw a clock, explain bank interest, and describe the trust dispute in my own terms. When he finished, he folded his hands. Mr. Mercer, you show normal age-related slowing and mild difficulty with delayed recall. You do not meet criteria for dementia or impaired decision-making capacity. Put it in plain English for a judge, he smiled. I intend to. And the video after surgery? Arthur asked. Post-operative delirium is common, especially after cardiac procedures. A short recording made while a patient is medicated has no value in establishing capacity 9 years later. The report would be ready Sunday morning. We returned to Arthur's office to find a courier waiting with a letter from Daniel's attorney. It demanded that I cease contact with the bank, surrender my car keys, and submit to an evaluation by a physician selected by Daniel. It also warned Arthur that communicating with me could constitute undue influence. Arthur read it twice. He is trying to turn every person who supports you into evidence that you are being manipulated. Can he do that? He can say it. Courts hear such claims often in contested guardianships. Rebecca paced beside the bookshelf. Then the bank manager, the inspector, and the doctor all need to testify. Eventually, Arthur said. Monday's hearing may be brief. The judge may only decide whether temporary protection is necessary while a full case proceeds. What if she appoints Daniel? I asked. We ask for a neutral professional instead. But even a neutral guardian would limit your choices, and Daniel would use the delay to pressure the bank. Likely. My phone rang. Vanessa. I answered on speaker after Arthur nodded. Raymond? Her voice was soft and tearful. Thank God. We've been so worried. I'm fine. Daniel said Rebecca took you somewhere. You know she isn't safe. Rebecca stopped pacing. What makes her unsafe? I asked. Her history. The accusations. The way she upset Margaret. Be specific. Vanessa hesitated. This is exactly what the doctors warned us about. When you become agitated, you fixate. Which doctors? Raymond, please, we love you. Then withdraw the guardianship petition, she exhaled shakily. We can't. Not while you're making financial decisions you don't understand, such as stopping the purchase of an old hotel for $4.7 million. The line went silent. When Vanessa spoke again, the tears were gone. Who told you that? Is the hotel for me? It's an investment. Daniel has worked for 2 years to create a safe place for seniors. You would have a private suite, medical support, everything. The property is worth $2.1 million. Appraisals vary. And the seller is your brother's company. Family connections don't make a transaction improper. Hiding them does. She lowered her voice. You need to be very careful, Raymond. Daniel has protected you from information that would overwhelm you. If you force everything into the open, you may not like what you learn. Is that a threat? It's concern. It always is. I ended the call. Arthur saved the recording. In our state, one participant could legally record a telephone conversation. I was that participant. Rebecca looked shaken. She knew exactly how to speak to you. Because I taught her what worked. What do you mean? Whenever she said she was worried, I stopped asking questions. I wanted to be a gracious father-in-law. After Margaret died, I was grateful she included me. I thought of every holiday Vanessa organized, every restaurant reservation, every birthday gift purchased with a card signed from all of us. I had admired her efficiency. Now I wondered how many of those dinners I had unknowingly paid for. Arthur picked up Margaret's letter. There is a stronger provision in the trust. Article 11. If an advisor acts in bad faith, conceals the trust from the beneficiary, or uses trust property for personal gain, that advisor is removed. If the advisor is also a remainder beneficiary, he is treated as having predeceased you. Meaning Daniel inherits nothing. From this trust, yes. But only after due process. The corporate trustee or a court must find bad faith. Does Daniel know? He received the trust instrument. Rebecca shook her head. He probably assumes no one can prove intent. Every payment is labeled as Dad's care. I looked at Margaret's letter once more. Help the children when help makes them stronger, not when it teaches them to use you. Then Sunday dinner isn't about making him confess to stealing, I said. It's about making him explain why he hid the truth. Arthur understood. Concealment. 87 signed certifications show the money. I want his own words to show the choice. Daniel's house stood on a private lane above the Westbridge golf course. It had limestone columns, a heated driveway, and windows tall enough for a church. He once told me the mortgage was a burden, and I gave him $40,000 from what I believed was my last investment account to help with the down payment. The trust accounting showed the house had been purchased without a mortgage. Arthur objected to me going alone. Rebecca objected louder. We compromised. I wore a small recording device clipped inside my shirt. Arthur waited at a diner 6 minutes away. Rebecca remained at her house with Noah. If I did not call by 8:30, Arthur would come for me. I arrived at 6. Vanessa opened the door before I rang. She wore a cream sweater and an expression of exhausted devotion. Oh, Raymond. She embraced me. One hand moved across my back near the recorder, but it was too small to feel through my coat. Come inside. You must be freezing. Daniel stood near the fireplace. He looked as he had at 35. Confident, controlled, handsome in a way that invited trust. A bottle of my favorite bourbon sat open on the bar. Dad. He approached slowly, as if I were an animal that might bolt. I'm glad you came. You asked me to. I've been calling. I know. He glanced toward the driveway. Did Rebecca bring you? I drove. His smile tightened. Your license may be temporarily suspended if the court grants the petition. Then I should enjoy it while I can. Vanessa laughed too quickly. Let's not talk about court before dinner. The table was set for 3 with Margaret's silver candlesticks. I had not seen them since the funeral. Those belong to your mother, I said. Daniel followed my gaze. You gave us some things when you downsized. I never downsized. After surgery, Dad. You don't remember. It was a small lie compared with millions, but it carried the whole design. Every objection became proof of my decline. I sat. Maybe you can remind me. Dinner began with roast beef, potatoes, and wine. Vanessa filled my glass twice before I finished half of it. I switched to water. For 20 minutes, they performed normal family life. Daniel described a commercial development. Vanessa complained about holiday traffic. They asked whether I slept well and whether I had taken my evening medication. No one mentioned the trust. Finally, I set down my fork. Why did you tell me Margaret's estate was gone? Daniel looked at Vanessa, then at me. It was complicated. Make it simple. Mom's shares were placed in a trust. You were in no condition to manage it. 9 years ago. Your condition didn't improve the way we hoped. I live alone, drive, cook, volunteer at the Rail Museum, and prepare my own taxes. With help. Whose idea was the $31,000 monthly fee to Vanessa's company? Vanessa's face hardened. Daniel placed one hand over hers. Vail coordinates your care, he said. Name 3 services it performed last month. This isn't an audit. It is at my table. Daniel leaned back. This is our table. There it was. Not anger exactly. Ownership. I let the silence stretch. When did you decide I no longer deserved the truth? Dad, you were broken after Mom died. You couldn't open mail. You called me crying in the middle of the night. I was grieving. You were incapable. For how long? He rubbed his forehead. This is why we didn't tell you the balance. You fixate on numbers. You would have started giving money away. To whom? Rebecca, for one. The trust belongs equally to both of you after I die. On paper. What does that mean? Vanessa intervened. Rebecca abandoned you. Daniel gave up years of his life. At $31,000 a month. Do you know what professional care costs? She snapped. Do you know how many appointments, emergencies, and late-night calls we handled? I had 3 medical appointments last year. I scheduled 2 myself. Daniel's voice dropped. Enough. No, I said. Not yet. Did you alter Rebecca's emails? He looked directly at me. She's poisoning you. Did you block her number? She was harassing you. Did you write a letter in my name telling Arthur to stay away? You asked me to. Did I? For the first time, Daniel lost control. He struck the table with his palm. The silverware jumped. You begged me to make it stop, he said. Mom was dead. You were useless. Rebecca was threatening lawsuits. Bills were everywhere. I held everything together while you sat in that house talking to a woman who wasn't there. The words hung above the table. I remembered speaking to Margaret after she died. Sometimes I still did. Grief was not evidence against me. It was evidence that I had loved someone. So you lied, I said. Daniel stood and walked to the fireplace. I made decisions. Someone had to. And when I recovered, you didn't recover. According to a neurologist I never met. His shoulders stiffened. Dr. Vargas, I said. Do you remember him? Vanessa rose. This conversation is over. Sit down, Daniel told her. She stared at him, then slowly returned to her chair. Daniel faced me. The trust company needed documentation. The cardiologist's letter wasn't enough. So where did the second letter come from? A consultant arranged an evaluation. There was no evaluation. You don't remember it. Convenient. His face flushed. Do you think the bank will hand you $28 million because you walked in asking for a furnace loan? There will be hearings, experts, years of litigation. Every strange thing you've done will become public. Every time you forgot a name, every time you got lost, every conversation you had with Mom after she died. You recorded me in the hospital. I recorded your condition. You were preparing even then. I was protecting this family. I looked around at the enormous room, the imported stone, and my wife's candlesticks. You protected it very comfortably. Vanessa slid a folder from the empty chair beside her. There's a way to end this without hurting anyone. Inside were 4 documents. The first authorized my voluntary admission to Brookstone Senior Living. The second confirmed Daniel as permanent financial agent. The third released Vail management from all claims. The fourth asked the bank to approve the hotel investment. You brought me here to sign these, I said. We brought you here to keep you out of a courtroom, Vanessa replied. Daniel sat beside me and lowered his voice. If the judge appoints a professional guardian, a stranger will control where you live. Legal fees will drain the trust. Rebecca will keep fighting until no one has anything. Sign tonight, and nothing changes except you move somewhere warm and safe. Nothing changes, I repeated. You'll have the best suite at Brookstone. We'll visit every week. You visit me twice a month now. Because you're difficult. He said it gently. That made it worse. I picked up a pen. Daniel and Vanessa exchanged a glance. I want one change, I said. The trust should pay Rebecca $200,000 to stop challenging it. Daniel's expression softened with relief. We can discuss that later. Put it in writing. Tonight is about your care. Then I won't sign. Vanessa stood again. For God's sake, Raymond. After everything we've done. Daniel held up a hand. Fine. We'll draft a separate distribution request. He went to his office and returned with a laptop. While he typed, Vanessa hovered behind him. I turned the documents to the signature pages. My railroad foreman taught us never to sign a safety inspection we had not performed. A signature is a piece of your life, he used to say. Don't leave it where someone else can use it. I wrote Raymond Merton instead of Raymond Mercer on each line, disguising the middle name with a flourish. It looked plausible from across the table and invalidated every document. Daniel printed the distribution request. It promised $200,000 to Rebecca in exchange for a waiver. I signed that one the same way. He gathered the papers immediately. I'd like copies, I said. Our attorney will send them. Now. Vanessa walked toward me. You're tired. And you're standing between me and the door. She stopped. Daniel looked from her to me. For a moment, I saw fear in his face, not concern for my health. Fear that I understood the room. He made copies. At the front door, he put a hand on my shoulder. You made the right choice, Dad. Did I? Once the hotel closes, everything will stabilize. You'll see. And the bank hold? His fingers tightened. The court order will resolve it tomorrow. You sound certain. I have the truth. I looked at my son, the boy I had taught never to cheat even when no one was watching. So do I. I drove away at 8:17. Arthur waited in the diner parking lot. I handed him the copies and the recorder. Did you sign? He demanded. Raymond Merton signed. Arthur stared, then laughed once in disbelief. Margaret used to call you that when she was angry. Daniel never paid attention. We listened to the recording in Arthur's car. The clearest moment came when Daniel said the trust company needed documentation and the cardiologist's letter was not enough. Not a confession of forgery. But it proved he knew the permanent incapacity claim required something more, and he had used it anyway. Arthur stopped the recording. This helps. Will it be enough tomorrow? His expression sobered. We'll find out. The courthouse smelled of floor wax and wet wool. By 8:30 Monday morning, every wooden bench outside the probate courtroom was occupied. Some families whispered. Others sat at opposite ends of the hall and looked through one another. Daniel arrived with Vanessa and 2 attorneys. He wore a dark blue suit and carried a leather portfolio. Vanessa dressed plainly, with no jewelry except her wedding ring. They had prepared to look burdened, not wealthy. Daniel approached me. Dad, you shouldn't be here. It's a hearing about my life. This is what Arthur wants. A public fight. Arthur stepped between us. All communication goes through counsel. Daniel's attorney smiled. Mr. Bell, your prior representation of the trust may create a conflict. File the motion, Arthur said. Rebecca came through the metal detector at the end of the hall. Daniel saw her and stopped pretending to smile. You brought her, he said to me. She brought herself. The judge was a woman in her 60s named Eleanor Hayes. She entered without ceremony and began promptly. Daniel's attorney asked for emergency guardianship, arguing that recent manipulation had caused me to obstruct essential care and jeopardize my assets. He presented the hospital video first. On a large screen, I appeared gray-faced and swollen. Tubes crossed my chest. My eyes opened and closed. Daniel's younger voice asked, Dad, do you know where you are? Union Station, I mumbled. Do you know who I am? Michael. Michael was my brother, dead since 1998. In the courtroom, Daniel stared at the table as if the video pained him too much to watch. His attorney then showed the furnace photograph, the scorched kettle, the mail, and a short clip of me standing in my yard 6 months earlier asking a delivery driver why he was there. The driver had the wrong address. The clip ended before that became clear. Mr. Mercer has moments of apparent clarity, the attorney said, but dementia is not constant. His son has covered deficiencies discreetly to preserve his dignity. They submitted a letter from Dr. Patel describing my occasional forgetfulness and anxiety. It did not diagnose dementia, but Daniel's attorney read every cautious phrase as if it did. Then Daniel testified. He spoke about my grief after Margaret's death. He described finding me asleep in a chair with the front door unlocked, forgetting an appointment, and calling him twice in one evening with the same question. Some events were exaggerated. Some were true. That was what made him convincing. I don't want control, he said, voice trembling at exactly the right moment. I want my father safe. If the court appoints someone else, I'll accept it. I just can't stand by while people exploit his confusion. His eyes moved toward Rebecca. Arthur cross-examined him. How much has Vail Management received from the Margaret Mercer Trust? Daniel's attorney objected that finances were beyond the emergency issue. Judge Hayes allowed a limited answer. Daniel said he did not know the exact amount. Vanessa managed the company. More than $2 million? Arthur asked. Possibly, over many years. Professional care is expensive. Did Vail provide daily bathing assistance? Staff and contractors handled different services. Name one. Daniel's attorney objected again. The judge told Arthur to move on. Did you know the furnace was disabled manually? Daniel's face changed for less than a second. No. How did you enter Raymond's home Friday morning? I have a key for emergencies. Did you open the furnace panel? Absolutely not. Did your wife? No. Did anyone acting for Vail Management? Not to my knowledge. Arthur submitted Lewis's report and photographs of the reconnected switch. Then he called the independent geriatric specialist, who testified by video. The doctor stated clearly that I had decision-making capacity and no clinical dementia. Daniel's attorney attacked the brief evaluation and argued that sophisticated individuals can hide deficits during structured testing. Helen testified next. She described my loan application, my questions, and the fraud alert. She said I read the hold authorization and accurately explained it before signing. Did Mr. Mercer appear surprised to learn of the trust? Arthur asked. Deeply surprised. Should the primary beneficiary of a $28 million trust be unaware it exists? Daniel's attorney objected. Sustained. Rebecca was our last witness. She described the forged emails and blocked contact. Daniel's attorney painted her as a resentful daughter who expected to inherit millions. He showed an old message in which she wrote, "If Daniel gets away with this, I will see him in court, even if it takes everything." You wanted control of the trust, didn't you? He asked. No. You are the alternate advisor. I asked the corporate trustee to appoint an independent professional. But if your father dies, you inherit. Rebecca looked at me before answering. I thought my father might die believing I betrayed my mother. I wanted that lie corrected. I did not know the trust was worth $28 million until Saturday. The judge called a recess. We waited in a small conference room. Arthur warned me that emergency hearings favored caution. The judge may preserve the status quo. The status quo is Daniel controlling me. I know. When we returned, Judge Hayes spoke carefully. She found substantial evidence that I currently possessed capacity. But she also found genuine concerns requiring investigation, including conflicting medical records, family allegations, and a large trust subject to competing claims. She denied Daniel's request for permanent authority. Then she appointed a temporary professional guardian for 14 days, limited to reviewing major medical and residential decisions. She prohibited everyone, including me, from changing my residence, selling property, or making trust distributions above $10,000 until a full hearing. The order kept me out of Brookstone. It also kept the $4.7 million frozen. But it placed a stranger between me and my own choices. Daniel looked disappointed for only a moment. Then his attorney whispered to him, and relief crossed his face. The judge had not removed him as distribution advisor. She referred that matter to the trust division for a separate hearing. Outside the courtroom, Daniel stopped near the elevator. You see what Rebecca did? Now a stranger controls you, temporarily. 2 weeks is enough to ruin everything. The hotel contract will collapse. Investors will sue us. Us? He realized the mistake. The trust. I meant the trust. The elevator doors opened. You signed the consent last night, he said quietly. If you deny it now, that only proves instability. Read the signature. His confidence wavered. Merton, I said. Your mother's name for me when I tracked mud through the kitchen. The doors began to close between us. You tricked me, he said. No, son. I finally read what you put in front of me. The professional guardian's name was Elaine Foster. She visited my house that afternoon, inspected every room, reviewed my medications, and asked me to prepare lunch while she watched. I made grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup. Do you usually eat like this? She asked. When someone is testing whether I can make lunch. She almost smiled. Fair answer. Elaine was not Daniel's ally, but she was cautious by profession. She collected my car keys pending a formal driving evaluation and asked Arthur to approve visitors in advance. I felt punished despite winning the most important part of the hearing. That night, I stood at the living room window while snow began covering the road. I had $28 million and no permission to drive to the grocery store. Money was not freedom. Control was. Daniel called at 7. Arthur advised me not to answer, but I did. The hotel seller canceled, Daniel said without greeting. We lost the deposit. Whose deposit? Mine. Vanessa's. Investors. Do you understand what you've done? Stopped you from buying a $2 million property for nearly $5 million? It was going to be worth $12 million after conversion. Then another buyer will be fortunate, he breathed heavily. Vanessa's brother may file bankruptcy. I'm sorry to hear that. No, you're not. Rebecca has turned you cruel. I looked at Margaret's photograph on the mantel. Did you disconnect my furnace? What? You heard me. Of course not. Did Vanessa? This paranoia is why the judge appointed Elaine. Did her brother? Daniel said nothing. Good night, I said. Dad, wait. The bank is threatening to remove me. If that happens, they can demand repayment from Vale. We could lose the house. For an instant, his voice sounded young. I remembered him at 16, admitting he had dented a neighbor's car. He had stood in my workshop with tears in his eyes and offered every dollar he earned that summer. Tell the truth, I said. Return what you took. That is where you begin. You think it's that simple? No. I think it was simple 9 years ago. He hung up. The next morning, the story appeared online. Local retiree's fortune becomes center of family capacity fight. The article quoted an unnamed source who said I had been manipulated by an estranged daughter after learning of an inheritance. It described Daniel as a devoted caregiver and mentioned my post-operative confusion. By noon, 2 television vans were parked near the courthouse. Arthur believed Daniel's public relations consultant planted the story. We could not prove it. At the Rail Museum, where I volunteered every Wednesday, the director called and suggested I take time away. Just until things settle, he said kindly. A neighbor came by with a casserole and stayed only 5 minutes because a camera crew waited across the street. My private grief had become public entertainment. Rebecca received worse. Anonymous messages called her a gold digger. Someone posted her employer's address. The community college placed her on paid leave while reviewing whether the publicity affected her counseling job. I'm sorry, I told her over the phone. Stop apologizing for what he does. You and Noah are paying for my mistakes. Then help me end it. That afternoon, Helen called with news that felt like another defeat. The trust's former officer, Colin Reese, had died 11 months earlier. The man who approved most of Daniel's requests could not testify. Bank archives showed that several original supporting documents had been destroyed under a routine retention schedule after digitization. The digital copies included the questionable neurologist's letter, but not the envelope or transmission record. Dr. Vargas existed. He had retired and moved overseas. His former office could find no record of treating me, but records older than 7 years had been purged. Daniel will say the file was lost, Arthur explained. The signature may be false, but without a specimen or witness, proving who made it will be difficult. We have the money transfers. He'll argue they were reasonable compensation approved by an independent trustee. And the recording? Helpful, not conclusive. We had evidence of abuse everywhere and proof of intent nowhere. Then Elaine called. Daniel had filed a motion accusing Arthur and Rebecca of pressuring me to change my estate plan. Until the full hearing, Elaine asked that I sign no new legal documents except through court-approved counsel. Arthur is my lawyer, I said. The court may need to review whether his past involvement creates a conflict. Daniel wants him removed. I understand your concern. Concern. The soft word people used while closing doors. That evening, Arthur came to the house with boxes from his archive. If the judge disqualifies me, another attorney will take over. We prepare the record now. We sorted correspondence from Margaret's final year. Near 10 o'clock, I found a yellow note in her handwriting clipped to a draft of the trust. Ask Samuel's old accountant about Daniel's proposal. Ray must be told together with Rebecca. No side meetings. What proposal? I asked. Arthur searched the surrounding files. Nothing. Rebecca, joining by video, went silent when she saw the note. I remember, she said. Daniel wanted Mom to move the Hale shares into a private investment partnership he was creating. She refused. Why? She said the partnership borrowed too much. A week later, Daniel told me she had changed her mind. That was when I emailed him to stop pressuring her. Arthur looked through his calendar from that year. Samuel's old accountant was Thomas Keene. He died 5 years ago. Another dead witness. Did he have a firm? I asked. He sold it before retirement. Rebecca leaned toward her camera. What about Mom's laptop? I looked toward the hall closet. Daniel took it after the funeral. He said he needed it for tax records. Did he take everything? Her desktop computer went to recycling. The laptop went with him. Rebecca shook her head. Mom backed up photographs. She was terrified of losing them. I remembered the small black device Margaret plugged into her computer every Sunday evening. After she died, I put it with her camera equipment in a cedar chest. Daniel had emptied the office. But he never cared about cameras. The chest was in the attic. Arthur called Elaine for permission before I climbed the stairs. She insisted someone accompany me. Arthur stood below while I lowered the dusty cedar chest one step at a time. Inside were 2 camera bodies, lenses, instruction manuals, and 3 portable hard drives wrapped in a dish towel. The first held photographs. The second held photographs and household records. The third was encrypted. Rebecca tried Margaret's birthday. Wrong. My birthday. Wrong. Their wedding anniversary. Wrong. I studied the password, hint, the safest investment. The house, I said. I typed the street number and Margaret's nickname for our home, 418 Green Harbor. The drive opened. Folders filled the screen. Taxes, Hale shares, trust drafts, medical records. A folder labeled Daniel Proposal contained scanned documents, emails, and an audio file. The date was 6 weeks before Margaret died. I pressed play. At first, there was rustling. Then Margaret's weakened voice. I'm recording because I'm tired of being told I misunderstood, Daniel answered. Mom, nobody is saying that. You asked me to sign the partnership papers after Ray left for the pharmacy. Because he gets emotional about money. It is our money. It's Hale money. Grandpa meant it to build something, not sit in a trust paying dividends. Your grandfather meant it to keep his family safe. A chair scraped. Daniel's voice hardened. Rebecca has already tried to turn Dad against me. If you leave her equal control, she will destroy everything. Neither of you will control it while Ray lives. He can't manage it. He can manage himself, not after you're gone. Margaret paused. When she spoke again, every word was clear. If you ever use my death to make your father feel helpless, you will lose more than this money. You will lose him. The recording ended. No one in the living room moved. Margaret had named Daniel's plan before it happened, and she had named its cost. Arthur made 3 copies of the hard drive before sunrise. One went into his office safe. One went to the bank's forensic team. Elaine took custody of the original and signed a receipt documenting every person who had handled it. Daniel's attorney immediately objected. He claimed the recording might be altered and argued that a dying woman's private conversation had no bearing on my current capacity. He was right about one thing. The recording alone did not prove every transaction, but it changed how the rest of the evidence looked. Before Margaret died, Daniel had already argued that I could not manage the trust. He had tried to move the Hale shares into a partnership he controlled. He had begun isolating Rebecca before grief or surgery could be blamed. His plan was no longer a series of helpful decisions that accidentally benefited him. It had a beginning. The hard drive gave us more. Margaret had scanned the partnership proposal. Daniel wanted the trust to invest almost all its Hale shares in Mercer Strategic Partners. The partnership agreement gave him broad power to borrow against the assets and paid him a 2% annual management fee. Margaret had written "declined" across every page. There was also an email from Daniel sent 3 days after her refusal. Mom, if you lock the shares away with Dad as beneficiary, you are handing a loaded weapon to a man who cannot balance a checkbook. When he fails, do not expect me to clean it up for free. Arthur read that sentence twice. For free. Rebecca nodded. Then Vale began charging the trust. The bank's forensic team found a 4th discovery in its own archives. Colin Reese, the deceased trust officer, had approved the first Vale contract after receiving what he called a business development loan from VDM Holdings. The loan was $180,000. No payment was ever made, and the debt vanished from VDM's books 18 months later. A bribe, I said. Helen was more cautious. It has the appearance of an undisclosed financial conflict. Investigators will decide what to call it. Reese had also overridden 3 automated warnings. One flagged that Vale's address matched Daniel's correspondence address. Another flagged the size of the monthly fees. The third reminded him that annual medical recertification was overdue. He closed each alert with the same note. Advisor confirms continuing incapacity. Beneficiary contact would cause distress. Daniel's name appeared beside every confirmation. The trust committee suspended him that afternoon. Under an emergency provision, no family member replaced him. A senior bank fiduciary became temporary advisor pending court review. At 4 o'clock, Elaine returned my car keys. I completed the home and medical assessment, she said. I found no reason to restrict ordinary daily decisions. I will recommend that the temporary guardianship terminate at the full hearing. I turned the keys over in my palm. Thank you. You don't have to thank someone for returning a right that should not have been taken. You followed the order. I did. She glanced at Margaret's photograph. And I learned something. Professional caution can protect people, but it can also become another form of control if we never ask what the person wants. For the first time since the bank, I felt the ground settle beneath me. Then a sheriff's detective called Arthur. The bank's elder exploitation report had been referred to a financial crimes unit. They wanted interviews and access to the accounting. Criminal investigators were now looking at Daniel and Vanessa. Rebecca expected me to feel relieved. Instead, I walked to the kitchen sink and stood with my back to everyone. Dad? I know what he did. Then what's wrong? When Daniel was 5, he stole $3 from Margaret's purse. He bought candy for every child on our street. When we confronted him, he cried because he thought generosity made the stealing good. I gripped the edge of the counter. I made him return the candy he still had and work off the rest. Margaret told him a kind purpose never cleans dirty hands. Rebecca waited. I thought he understood. Maybe he did then. Where did I lose him? You didn't make him do this. No. But I helped him believe being needed made him entitled. Rebecca came to stand beside me. And you helped me believe being angry made me disposable. I turned toward her. If we are going to repair this, she said, we don't get to lie kindly. You're right. Daniel made his choices. You made yours. I made mine. Mom wasn't here to stop any of us. I gave a sad laugh. She certainly tried. Rebecca looked at the photograph. Yes, she did. My phone announced a message from Vanessa. It was not a call this time. It was a photograph of Daniel sitting alone in their dark kitchen, his head in his hands. He hasn't slept. If you keep pushing, I'm afraid of what he'll do. Arthur told me not to answer. I typed 3 words anyway. Call a doctor. I did not call the bank. I did not offer money. I did not promise to end the case. Concern could be real without becoming surrender. Vanessa arrived at my house Thursday morning without Daniel. She stood on the porch in a gray coat, holding Margaret's silver candlesticks in a shopping bag. A news camera remained parked at the corner, so I let her inside after calling Arthur. He joined the conversation by speakerphone. Vanessa objected, then accepted when I opened the door to let her leave. She placed the candlesticks on the kitchen table. These are yours. They always were. Daniel said you gave them to us. Did you believe him? She unbuttoned her coat but did not sit. In the beginning, the phrase mattered. When did you stop? Raymond, I came to make this right. Then answer. She looked older without the careful expression she wore in court. I knew the care reports overstated what we did. Daniel said it was necessary because the trust would only reimburse formal services. We handled your bills, the house, the doctors. He said the fee compensated us for being available. $31,000 every month. That number grew. It wasn't always that much. The first payment was $18,000. She looked toward the speakerphone. You already know everything. Arthur's voice came through. We know the records. We are giving you an opportunity to tell Mr. Mercer the truth. Vanessa sat at last. Daniel's business was failing when Margaret got sick. He had guaranteed loans. If the banks called them, we would lose our home and he would lose his license. He believed the Hale shares should have been his opportunity. Margaret wouldn't listen. Because the shares were hers, I said. She never built that company. Neither did Daniel. Vanessa pressed her lips together. After your surgery, Colin showed Daniel how the advisor provision worked. Colin wanted a share. Daniel paid him through the development company. Who wrote the neurologist's letter? Arthur asked. Her eyes dropped. Vanessa, I said. Colin provided a template. Daniel changed the details. The kitchen seemed to narrow around us. And Dr. Vargas's signature? I never saw Daniel sign it. That isn't what I asked. He scanned a real signature from a seminar certificate. Colin said no one would check because the cardiologist's letter supported temporary incapacity and the trust only needed the second letter for the file. Arthur spoke calmly. Are you willing to provide a sworn statement? Vanessa looked at me. If Raymond agrees not to pursue claims against me. There was the offer. What did you do? I asked. Vale was my company, but Daniel directed the trust requests. You signed the monthly reports. He gave me the information. You wrote that you bathed me. Her face reddened. The categories were standardized. You wrote that I could not dress myself while I was spending Wednesdays replacing brake lines on a museum locomotive. I didn't know. You knew enough to bill for it. Vanessa opened her purse and took out a flash drive. This contains company emails, invoices, and voice messages. It also contains the furnace work order. For the first time, my calm broke. What furnace work order? Daniel told my brother to make the house look unsafe before the petition. He was supposed to document deferred maintenance. My brother disconnected the switch. He said it wouldn't damage anything. You photographed the thermostat. She did not deny it. You left the Brookstone contract on my table. We needed the judge to see there was a safe placement available. You made my home unsafe so you could prove I needed to leave it. The hotel closing was Monday. If the deal failed, everything would come apart. I stood and walked to the window. Snow rested on the porch rail Margaret painted every 3 summers. Daniel and Vanessa had reduced my life to obstacles between them and a closing date. What do you want? I asked. Protection. I will return the jewelry, the cars, and whatever is left in Vale's accounts. I'll sell my interest in the house. I'll testify that Daniel controlled the scheme. And you want me to say you were another victim? He lied to me too. Did he force you to unplug the furnace? No. Did he force you to sign 84 care reports? No. Did he force you to stand between me and the door Sunday night? She began to cry. This time, the tears may have been real. No, she whispered. Then I won't buy your honesty with another lie. She pushed the flash drive across the table. You'll need this. If it contains evidence, give it to your lawyer and the investigators. Arthur will arrange it. I brought it to you. Because you wanted a bargain. Vanessa looked toward the family photographs on the wall. Daniel said you would forgive him. He said fathers always protect their sons in the end. For many years, he was right. What changed? I learned protection is not the same as preventing consequences. She left the flash drive and walked out without the candlesticks. Arthur remained silent on the speaker until her car was gone. Do not touch the drive, he said. I'll have an investigator collect it. Will they use her statement? They will decide. She may cooperate in exchange for consideration from prosecutors, but that is not ours to promise. I lifted one candlestick from the bag. Wax from Margaret's last Christmas still filled the base of the cup. Arthur, I don't feel victorious. Good, he said quietly. Victory is for games. This is accountability. The full hearing began 13 days after I entered the bank. This time, the trust dispute and guardianship matter were heard together. The courtroom was larger, and every seat was filled. Judge Hayes prohibited cameras, but reporters lined the hall. Daniel sat without Vanessa. His face looked hollow. He had replaced his first attorneys with a criminal defense lawyer and separate probate counsel. Vanessa sat across the aisle beside her own attorney. The bank petitioned to remove Daniel permanently, recover improper distributions, and enforce Article 11's forfeiture provision. Arthur asked the court to terminate the guardianship and restore all my rights. Rebecca asked for nothing except recognition that the documents attributed to her were false. Daniel opposed everything. His strategy had changed. He no longer denied all irregularities. He claimed Colin Reese designed the arrangement, Vanessa administered it, and he relied on professionals while caring for a vulnerable father. He admitted shielding me from financial information but described it as compassionate protection. Helen testified first. She walked the court through the account match that appeared during my loan application. The bank's forensic accountant followed. Using simple charts, he showed the flow of money from the trust to Vale, VDM, the dealership, the private club, and travel vendors. He showed the $180,000 loan to Reese and the canceled debt. Then Luis explained the furnace switch. Vanessa's company work order, recovered from the flash drive, instructed a contractor to disable heating pending safety placement 2 days before the guardianship petition. A text from Vanessa to her brother said, "Need house under 50 by Friday morning. Make it reversible." Daniel's attorney objected that his client had not sent the message. Arthur agreed. Vanessa sent it. "We are not claiming otherwise." He then displayed Daniel's message to Vanessa from the night before. "Judge needs visual proof. Dad can't remain there. Have your brother handle VAC when Dad goes to breakfast." Daniel stared at the screen without expression. The geriatric specialist testified again and explained the difference between grief, temporary post-operative delirium, normal aging, and dementia. Elaine described my functioning during her 14-day appointment. She recommended immediate termination of guardianship. "Mr. Mercer does not need a substitute decision-maker," she said. "He needed accurate information and freedom from interference." Rebecca took the stand. This time, Daniel's attorney did not attack her character as aggressively. The altered emails had been examined by a digital expert, who confirmed they came from an imitation address created using a recovery phone tied to Daniel's old business number. Rebecca described losing contact with me and raising Noah without his grandfather. She did not embellish. She did not ask for sympathy. Her restraint did what anger never could. Vanessa testified under a cooperation agreement that did not guarantee immunity. She admitted signing false care reports, participating in the furnace plan, and helping Daniel prepare documents for Sunday dinner. She said Daniel created the false medical letter using Colin Reese's template. On cross-examination, Daniel's lawyer revealed that Vanessa hoped for reduced criminal charges and planned to divorce Daniel. "You will say anything to save yourself, won't you?" he asked. Vanessa looked at him. "I said whatever saved me for 9 years. Today I'm saying what condemns me too." Then Arthur called Daniel. Daniel exercised his right not to answer questions that might incriminate him. In a criminal trial, the court could not punish that choice. But this was also a civil trust proceeding, and the judge could consider the other evidence without his explanation. Arthur played the Sunday dinner recording. Daniel's voice filled the room. The trust company needed documentation. The cardiologist's letter wasn't enough. He played Margaret's recording next. "If you ever use my death to make your father feel helpless, you will lose more than this money. You will lose him." Daniel closed his eyes. Finally, I took the stand. Arthur began with ordinary questions. My work history, my pension, my medications, the furnace, the loan, Helen's office, the number on the screen. "What did you think when you learned the trust held more than $28 million? He asked. "I thought someone had made a mistake." "Were you pleased?" "No." "Why not?" "Because the manager looked afraid for me." He asked about my dependence on Daniel. I told the truth, including facts that did not flatter me. I described unopened mail after Margaret died. I described calling Daniel in tears. I admitted forgetting appointments and leaving the kettle on while I checked a breaker. Do those events mean you lack capacity? No, they mean I am human and 72. A few people in the courtroom shifted. "Why did you trust Daniel?" "Because he was my son. Because he stayed close. Because every time he removed a decision from my hands, he called it help." "Did you consent to his management of the trust?" "I did not know the trust existed." "Did you authorize payments to Vale?" "No." "Did you want to move to Brookstone?" "No." "What do you want now?" I looked at Judge Hayes. My keys, my house, my bank statements, my right to make a good decision or a bad one without having grief used as a diagnosis. I want my daughter's name cleared. I want the trust managed by people who are paid openly and watched carefully. And I want my son to stop calling control love. Arthur sat down. Daniel's attorney approached for cross-examination. He asked whether I still spoke to Margaret's photograph. I said yes. "You understand your wife is dead? Every minute of every day. Yet you talk to her. Sometimes the dead are easier to trust than the living." The judge looked down, perhaps hiding a reaction. The attorney asked whether Rebecca now spent several days a week with me. Yes. Whether she stood to inherit. Under the original trust? Yes. Whether I intended to reward her. I said I had made no estate change while the case was pending. "But you might." "I might also spend everything on the ridiculous fishing boat Margaret told me to buy." A quiet laugh moved through the courtroom. Even Judge Hayes smiled before calling for order. The attorney's last question was the one Daniel had built the case around. Mr. Mercer, isn't it true that without your son, your bills, health care, and property would have fallen into chaos after your wife died? I considered it. For a little while, yes, I said. He helped me when I was weak. That is why what came after worked. A thief at the door would not have entered. My son already had a key. He had no further questions. Judge Hayes took a recess. We waited almost 2 hours. When she returned, she read her decision from the bench. She found clear and convincing evidence that I had capacity and that no guardianship was necessary. The temporary order ended immediately. She found that Daniel had acted in bad faith, concealed material information, engaged in self-dealing, and used a false incapacity process to maintain control. He was permanently removed from every trust roll. Under Article 11, he was treated as having predeceased me for purposes of the remainder. He would inherit nothing from Margaret's trust. The bank was ordered to provide a full accounting, pursue recovery, and create a restitution plan. All disputed assets acquired by Vail or VDM were subject to preservation orders. The court referred its findings to the district attorney and state elder protection agency. Judge Hayes did not declare Rebecca advisor. Instead, she approved my request for an independent 3-person trust committee, 1 professional fiduciary, 1 accountant, and 1 elder law advocate. Any distribution above $100,000 would require written notice to me and unanimous approval until the civil recovery concluded. Then the judge looked directly at Daniel. Mr. Mercer, guardianship is among the most serious powers a court can grant. It is intended to protect human dignity, not to convert vulnerability into access. Your father's age did not make his rights negotiable. Daniel bowed his head. The gavel came down once. My life belonged to me again. Daniel waited outside the courtroom after most people left. His attorneys stood near the stairwell, but he asked them to give us a minute. Arthur stayed close enough to see us. Rebecca went downstairs with Elaine. For the first time in years, Daniel looked like neither a businessman nor a caregiver. He looked like my son after a long illness, thinner, frightened, and unsure whether I would reach for him. Dad, he said. I waited. Vanessa gave them everything. The records existed before she spoke. She disconnected the furnace. At your direction. I didn't mean for you to get hurt. It was one night. We knew you had space heaters. You knew I was in the house. He looked away. The hotel deal would have saved everyone, not me. You would have had the best room. In a building my money bought from Vanessa's brother at twice its value. I could have made it work. His voice rose, then he caught himself. I made mistakes, but I managed that trust for 9 years. It grew. The investments grew under the corporate trustee. You took fees. I kept Rebecca away. Mom knew she was reckless. Your mother told you to stop turning us against each other. He flinched. She recorded me when she was dying. How is that fair? Truth does not become unfair because you did not know it had a witness. Daniel's eyes filled. They're going to charge me. Probably. You can tell them this is a family matter. The bank reported it. But you can refuse to cooperate. You can say you don't want prosecution. There it was. The request beneath every other request. What would you do if I agreed? I asked. Hope entered his face. I'd make restitution. I'd sell the house, the cars, everything. I'd go to counseling. I'd rebuild this. Would you admit what you did in writing? His hope faded. My lawyer says I can't. Would you apologize to Rebecca publicly? That could be used against me. Would you admit I have capacity? Of course, but the petition was based on what I knew at the time. Even now, every truth required a door left open for escape. I stepped closer. Daniel, I can forgive the 5-year-old who stole $3 for candy. I can forgive the frightened son who took over my bills after surgery. I may even forgive the man standing in front of me someday, but I will not protect the man who forged my incapacity, stole 9 years of my life, and tried to lock me away before I discovered it. He began to cry. I'm your son. Yes. My own voice nearly failed. That is why this hurts. It is not why the consequences disappear. Then you're choosing Rebecca. No. I am choosing the truth. You are the one who made it feel like only one child could remain. He wiped his face with the back of his hand. Mom would hate this. Your mother warned you about this. His attorneys approached. A detective waited near the courtroom doors, not to arrest him that day, but to arrange an interview. Daniel looked at me one last time. "If I go to prison, that's on you." I shook my head. "No, son. That sentence belongs to you, too." He walked away. I leaned against the wall after he disappeared down the stairs. Arthur stood beside me without speaking. "Was I cruel?" I asked. "No. It felt cruel. Boundaries often do when someone has survived by crossing them." Rebecca came back up and took my hand. She did not ask what Daniel said. She simply stood with me until I could walk. The legal cases lasted longer than the headlines. Over the next 14 months, investigators traced money through Vail, VDM, vehicle titles, club accounts, and real estate transfers. The Westbridge house was sold. The 2 luxury vehicles were surrendered. Vail's remaining accounts were turned over. Insurance carried by the corporate trustee covered part of the loss caused by its employees' failures. In the end, the trust recovered a little more than $3 million. Legal and forensic costs consumed a portion. The hotel advance and the proposed purchase never left the trust, so the principal remained close to $28 million despite everything. Vanessa pleaded guilty to conspiracy, falsifying business records, and attempted financial exploitation of an older adult. Her cooperation reduced her sentence, but it did not erase it. She served 11 months in county custody, followed by home confinement and restitution supervision. Daniel rejected the first plea offer. He continued saying, "Colin designed the scheme and Vanessa executed it." Then the digital expert recovered deleted drafts of the false medical letter from an old VDM backup. Daniel's username appeared in the revision history. He pleaded guilty before trial. The judge sentenced him to 30 months in federal custody for fraud-related offenses, followed by supervised release, and imposed joint restitution obligations. Some people online said the sentence was too short. Others said I should have saved my son. None of them had sat at our kitchen table when he was 9. None had watched him teach Rebecca to throw a baseball. None had heard Margaret tell him he would lose more than money. Justice did not make those memories disappear. It made room for them to exist without overruling the present. I wrote Daniel once a month. I did not send money beyond what prison rules allowed for basic books and calls. I did not contact officials seeking special treatment. My letters contained ordinary things: weather, rail museum repairs, Noah's baseball games, the maple tree losing a limb in a storm. For 6 months, Daniel did not answer. Then a letter arrived. "Dad, I keep trying to write an apology that doesn't sound like a defense. Every version includes a reason. Mom died. The business failed. Colin showed me a loophole. Vanessa wanted the house. You needed help. Rebecca hated me. All of those things happened, but none made my hand sign your name. At first, I told myself I was borrowing authority. I would stabilize everything, make more money, and give it back before you noticed. Then I liked being the person everyone had to ask. When you thanked me, I felt powerful and ashamed at the same time. The shame made me hide more, so I needed more control. I do not expect forgiveness. I wanted you to know I finally understand that you were not the weak one in our family. I was. Daniel." I read it 3 times. Then I put it in the drawer with Margaret's letter. Not because the 2 letters were equal, but because truth had finally entered both. Rebecca and I rebuilt slowly. I did not hand her a large check and expect money to repair the years. We began with Wednesdays. She and Noah came to the rail museum after school. I taught Noah the difference between a locomotive motor and a generator. Rebecca brought sandwiches. Sometimes we spoke about the missing years. Sometimes we did not. When the college restored her position, I attended her first public lecture. She introduced me simply as her father. The word felt like an honor I was still earning. I asked whether she wanted to become a future trust advisor. She said no. "Good," I replied. "Your mother would approve." We revised my estate plan with independent counsel. Rebecca remained a beneficiary, but no family member would control another person's health or daily finances. Daniel's forfeiture under Margaret's trust was irrevocable. In my personal will, I left him a small, supervised education fund for any future grandchildren and a box of family photographs. I was not ready to leave him wealth. I was not willing to erase his existence either. With the Trust Committee's help, I created the Mercer Voice Project with an initial $5 million endowment. It paid for independent legal consultations and financial reviews for older adults facing questionable guardianship petitions or suspected exploitation. Helen joined its advisory board. Elaine trained volunteers to ask one essential question before discussing protection. What does the older person want? Arthur refused a paid position. He agreed to attend meetings if we served decent coffee. I repaired the porch in spring. I replaced the furnace, even though the old one still worked, because I no longer wanted that machine humming beneath my house like a memory of threat. The new system cost $8,300. I paid the invoice myself and kept a copy in my own file. Then I bought a fishing boat. It was not ridiculous, at least, not completely. It was a used 22-foot center console with a reliable motor and enough room for 3 people. I named it Margaret's Argument. Rebecca laughed when she saw the lettering. She would hate that, she said. She would pretend to. Noah wore a life jacket 2 sizes too bright and asked whether trains could pull boats. I told him anything could be moved if you understood where the power came from. 2 years after I walked into Lake County Mutual, Helen invited me to speak at a training session for bank employees. I did not tell them how to recognize every kind of fraud. Experts handled that. I told them what it felt like to be the person across the desk. Do not assume an old coat means poverty, I said. Do not assume a large balance means freedom. And when a relative answers every question for an older person, find a respectful way to hear the older person alone. Afterward, a young loan officer asked what I would have done if the furnace had not failed. The question stayed with me. Perhaps I would have discovered the trust eventually. The bank might have mailed a new statement. Daniel's hotel plan might have triggered an audit. Rebecca might have tried once more. Or perhaps Daniel would have moved me into Brookstone on Monday. Perhaps the hotel purchase would have closed. Perhaps every objection I made would have been entered into a chart as agitation. I might have spent the rest of my life being cared for by people paid with my money while my son explained that I no longer understood it. A $6,000 loan application did not save me by itself. Helen's decision to close her office door and ask one more question did. Rebecca's refusal to destroy old evidence did. Arthur's copies did. Margaret's caution did. And eventually, my willingness to admit that trusting someone did not require me to ignore what he had done. On the 2nd anniversary of the court decision, Rebecca, Noah, and I took Margaret's Argument onto Lake Ellison. The morning was clear and cold. A thin mist rested above the water. Noah held the fishing rod with fierce concentration. Rebecca poured coffee from a thermos. I sat at the wheel and watched sunlight spread across the lake. "Grandpa," Noah said, "Mom says you're rich." Rebecca nearly spilled her coffee. "I did not say it like that." I laughed. "Your mother is right, but probably not for the reason you think." He frowned. "Do you still have $28 million? Children ask the questions, adults decorate." "Something close to that," I said. "Then why is your car so old?" "Because it starts." He considered this and nodded. "And because money is a tool," I added. "If you let it become the person in charge, it will make terrible decisions." Rebecca looked toward the shoreline. "That sounds like Grandma." "Most of my good ideas do." Noah's fishing line jerked. He shouted and began reeling. The fish was small, no longer than my hand, but he celebrated as if he had pulled treasure from the lake. I helped him remove the hook. He wanted to keep it. I told him it was too small. "But I caught it," he protested. "That doesn't mean it belongs to you forever." He looked disappointed, then lowered the fish into the water. It flashed once beneath the surface and disappeared. Rebecca rested her hand on my shoulder. For years, I believed peace meant keeping the family together at any cost. I know better now. Peace is not a locked door, a quiet argument, or a lie everyone agrees not to examine. Peace is being able to sit inside your own life without asking permission. I still loved Daniel. Some mornings, that love felt like grief. Some evenings, it felt like hope. Forgiveness, I learned, was not a door I had to open before I was ready. It was a road I could walk without carrying him on my back. Rebecca and I could not recover the 8 years we lost. We could only refuse to lose the next 8. The money paid for lawyers, repairs, restitution work, and chances I had never imagined. But the most valuable thing returned to me was not listed in any accounting. It was my voice. The same voice Daniel had described as confused. The same voice I had silenced to avoid conflict. The same voice that finally told a courtroom, a bank, and my own son that I was still here. As we turned the boat toward home, I thought of that first question in Helen's office. Why are you asking us for $6,000? At the time, I believed I was there to repair a furnace. I had no idea I was about to reclaim my life.